Welcome back to Fl'AwesomeBlossom. All right, mes petits choux, my precious petals, and my darling dahlias. We are going to jump in to a story from the greatest story ever told. I know about David and Goliath and the little guy wins. Well, that's true. The little guy does win, but I need you to use your logic brain about it a bit. Like, it sounds like a great story when you're just like, oh yeah, some kid came and he killed this giant. Woo! But you got to flush it all out. And this story is in 1 Samuel, and it starts really, I mean, there's a prologue to David, which you should probably be familiar with. So I guess, like, really, let's say this. It's, you should really read from chapters 14. That's the beginning of the prologue. You need that preamble to understand the scenario at play when David comes into the picture. So truly, like, chapter 14 all the way through to, let's just go 20. Just chapter 20, because that sets you up. This is when we get introduced to David, and it's his big entrance into the Bible. And what an entrance, and what a first event for him. He certainly makes a name for himself, and he's God's chosen one, right? Anyway, fast forward. Here we go. Verse 37. David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and the Lord be with you. Because really at this point, no one for 40 days has stepped up. Everyone is pissing themselves afraid of Goliath. I don't blame them. I don't think these people had a lot of war experience, right? So they're just going to lose their noodle when they see this enormous person. This person, Goliath, is 6'9". So let's say the average height of an Israeli man in biblical times is 5'6". We'll even give him 5'9". How about that? 5'9". Goliath is an entire foot taller. He's bigger, he's well armored, and people have an idea of what a battle is. You put on your armor, you go out with your sword and your shield, and you fight hand-to-hand combat, right? That's what you're doing. Got your sword, and you're fighting. You're fighting close combat, right? Arm's length, slightly more than arm's length away. Don't mind if I do. I'm having a hot flash. Let's just work right through it. All right. So Saul's just like, okay, fine. And probably he's also thinking in his head, what's the worst thing that could happen? David dies, so God's newly anointed one is gone. Will his favor shine back on me? Maybe. Saul thinks this is a good idea. But he also really likes David because he's been spending some time with him, right? And so Saul decides, no problem. I'm going to set you up with some armor. So David's familiar with Saul's armor, and he is put into it, and he starts to try and move around. But Saul, he's got to be in his 40s, his 50s. What do you think the state of this human is, right? He's probably bigger, taller than David. He's probably heavier. He's a king. He might even be a little chubby, right? He's getting some good food. Is he getting some good exercise, or is he lounging in the lap of luxury? Not really sure. He might be a bigger person than David. And now David is being put into his armor. And armor is heavy. We already know that Goliath's, just his coat, his chainmail coat, is 120 pounds. We can imagine that Saul's armor is somewhere close to that. Let's just, for fun, just say it's 100 pounds. All right? 100 pounds. So now David, 13, 14 years old, you're throwing 100 pounds of weight on him and asking him to go out there and like fight, wah, 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 right? This is why no one wants to do it. They know they're not going to be fast enough. It's going to armor slows them down. They're not going to be fast enough. Maybe they're not going to be quick enough to get out of the giant reach of Goliath. If you're 5'9" and you're fighting someone a foot taller than you, you've got to come in a little bit more. Your reach is not as long as theirs. This is why no one wanted to fight him, right? One-on-one combat sounds really scary. But David knows something that these fools didn't know. He knows you have to fight smarter, not harder. You have to learn the lay of the land. You got to know what works for you. So he tries on Saul's armor and he's like, oh, it's too heavy. I can't do this. I don't know how to move in this. This is actually not going to help me. I just need to go out like I'm protecting my flock. And he takes his slingshot with a couple of great stones that he picks up, right? And he goes out to meet Goliath. And I love this because he's using his brain. He doesn't need to get close. But here's where this gets very interesting for me, okay? Very, very interesting. And I've heard someone else come up with this idea too, but I want to flesh it out completely. So Goliath, 6'9", right? Massive, massive dude. But we've already known that he's had an escort come out once where he's making this announcement, hey, come and fight me. And so for 40 days and 40 nights, every day he's coming out there and he's like, hey, do this, do that. Like, come on, fight me. And what's happening in the army tent? He's still going to be plied with wine, plied with women, and he has fought battles all the way to get here. Do you think Goliath was concussed? I do. And the reason why is because A, it's logical. It's logical. This human being is in major amounts of fights for however long it took their army to go from Philistine to the battlefield in Judah. And there's probably skirmishes. There's fighting that happens in the ranks of armies. Right? Little shovey, fisty woo around the campfire, right? And this could have happened. He could have been concussed from his battles. He could have been concussed from something that went on in the tent. But he's been in battle most of his life. Is it possible he's had multiple concussions over his life? Absolutely. Do we know what concussion symptoms are? Irritability. He doesn't seem like a nice guy. He seems pretty irritated. And blurry vision. And this might explain why he needs an escort to help him. But here's the thing. Here's the thing that really confirms for me that something is going on physically for Goliath. Because when David goes to fight him. Here we go. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 40. And he took his staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a script. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. So this is David. He's got his sling. He's got a couple more stones in his little bag that he's got across him. He's got one staff with him, his shepherd's staff, and he goes towards Goliath. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. Again, clear, absolutely clear that Goliath has an escort. Goliath is a great big man. If he's going out into battle, he is absolutely used to carrying his weapons and his shield himself. Why does he need someone carrying his shield for him as he's walking up to have one-on-one battle? Why does someone have to carry this for this great big strapping man. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Now I need you to know here, this is super duper important. Words are so important. Goliath calls out to David, Are you kidding me? You're coming at me like I'm a dog with sticks? Sticks, staves, plural, more than one. And it's a different word. It's an absolutely different word. So it's not a typo. It's not like goose to geese. It's a different word that is used to basically to say the plural of the word staff or stick. And Goliath is like, you got sticks. Both, two, at least, more than one. And I'm sure David's like, what? What does this tell us? This tells us that Goliath is having some blurry vision, right? Some double vision. So I want you to think about it for a second, and I want you to use your logic brain. Goliath is enormous. He is a giant of men, all right? What do we know about giantism? Giantism is a condition that happens when there's typically a tumor that is on your pituitary gland. And giantism begins before your growth platelets have solidified. So that basically means an individual born with giantism typically has a tumor on their pituitary gland, and their body starts to grow, and it grows really big, really fast, because the growth plates of your bones are not solid, and it is allowing the growth of the bone. Now, that comes with some vision issues. Because of where the pituitary gland is, it's very next to our visual cortex, really close to our visual center. And often with giantism, the tumor grows as well, and it will press on the pituitary gland, which will then press on the spot where the optic nerves meet. So it's not on one side where you have blurry vision on one eye. It's right where the nerves meet, and they're crossing over in that junction. And that's where that's going to be giving some pressure. So often people with giantism have blurry vision, poor vision, and they need corrective lenses to help them out. Let's imagine that Goliath is not a giant. Maybe he suffers from a different one. Maybe it's acromegaly, which is similar to giantism, only it happens after the plates are sealed, but the bones still grow. So the long bones of the face, the long bones of the arm and the leg, those actually continue to grow. It's kind of painful because the growth plates are sealed, and these people tend to have major growing pains. It's usually quite painful. But that, guess what? Also caused by a tumor on the pituitary gland. So guess what? Also subject to the same kind of visual impairments, double vision more specifically. So even if he is not a giant, we can agree he's been a soldier and has likely had head injury after head injury after head injury. And if you have had multiple concussions, you're often just not seeing very well, and you're not thinking very clearly, and you're often belligerent and crappy. Like you're often nasty. That's what concussions kind of do. It makes you grumpy. And Goliath certainly seemed to have been grumpy. So basically, what happens is he's like, are you coming at me with these sticks? Oh my gosh. And they go to meet each other, but David stops because he's not a dummy. He's done this before with a bear and a lion, and you're not going hand-to-hand combat with a bear or a lion. And I'm not even sure if we're talking about those great big maned lions. I'm Canadian. I'm imagining, this shepherd up in the mountains with his sheep, and he's probably encountering a mountain lion, something really close to a cougar, right? So I've seen these bad boys in real life, and you're not messing with those. You're not coming close. You need to hope that the cat is so scared and he runs away from you, because, oh my gosh, you do not want to get close to a mountain lion. And David knows this. We would have been hiding behind his rock, and he would have been like, wha-choom, throwing his little slingshot. And I think that was a conversation that he and his older brother had as well. His older brother's like, you're not a soldier. What are you doing? You can't do this. And David's like, I know what I'm doing. I'm a really good shot with a slingshot. And I'm sure Eliab was like, oh yeah, slingshot. That's going to kill Goliath. But it works. The slingshot doesn't actually kill Goliath. No, but it knocks him the F out. And then David's able to run up to him, grab Goliath's own sword, and chops off his head. Ta-da! David was using his head. David took an unusual approach to this fight. And it's amazing to me that no one thought about this before, right? But you'd have to be sure, wouldn't you? You would have to be sure of your shot. You'd have to have a sure shot. That's right, Beastie Boys. Anyway, yeah, David, a thinker outside the box, and it worked for him. So basically, David knocks Goliath out, goes, grabs his sword, and chops off Goliath's head. And when the men of the Philistine army saw that their champion was dead, they fled. And I can also imagine they're coming to fight with Saul because they've heard that God has given, that Saul believes God has given him his favor. And these Philistines are like, there's no God above our God. We're gonna prove you wrong. And then they hear the rumor that this boy, right? They would have heard it. Would have gotten around. It would have spread like wildfire, actually, that Saul had fallen out of favor with God. Probably why the Philistines marched right after that incident, right after Saul came back from not fulfilling his duty of killing all the people in that other town and all the things. And the Philistines heard about it, heard about how Saul fell from God's grace, and thought, great opportunity for us. We're going to walk in and we're going to take over this land. And they would have heard that this kid was anointed. And they would have been like, yeah, right, whatever. A 13, 14-year-old, a shepherd boy. And Goliath, a soldier from his youth. Could you imagine? He would have been insulted. He would have been like, what? Why are you coming at me like this? Come on, bro, pick up your sword. Let's go at it like men. And David did go about it like a man, using his noggin, using his brain that God gave him. All right? And using the instances of his past, the lessons he learned from the trials he faced in his past, to implement them for success here. Can you think of a time in your life where you have done something that was like, whoa, that worked? It doesn't matter. It's not fighting Goliath. It's not fighting off a lion or a bear. But have you done something in your past that maybe that lesson from there can be applied now to help you in your current strife? Just wondering, just thinking, are you fighting strong or are you fighting smart? Think about it. Really think about it. Is this the time for swords? Or is this the time to stand back and be like, let's let ballistics do some work. Let's rely on science. Let's rely on speed. And if you're wondering, how could possibly a slingshot take down Goliath? It's ballistics. I would also encourage you to watch some baseball. Just a little bit of baseball. And you watch they'll do this now, right? When the pitcher throws that ball, it'll tell you how fast that thing was going. Now that's a grown man throwing a ball really hard with his hand. And I have seen that speedometer, the odometer, the speed measure, be somewhere between like 60 miles an hour, like 70 miles an hour. That's fast. And when that ball hits you, you're going to know all about it. Now imagine a rock, something a little more solid and unforgiving than a baseball. And it's not being thrown by a man, but flung with centrifugal force whoosh, out of the slingshot. How fast do you think that's going? My guess, it's close to, if not exceeding, 65 miles an hour. And if you are hit by a rock that is maybe this size in your forehead at that speed, you're going down, my friend. You're going to go down, especially if the shot landed in a good spot. If it landed somewhere where the nerve bundles are a little bit more exposed, like if right between the eyeballs, right here, right there, boom, you'd be knocked out. A good one right also here, right in the middle of the chin. If you hit that, if you can get a solid compression into this spot right here, you can knock someone out. So, there you go. Ballistics. All right, my blooming blossoms and my darling dahlias. This was the first of many Bible stories that I'm going to tell. All right. And yeah, I ad-libbed a few things, but it's not outside of the realm of possibility. It's not outside of the realm of possibility that Saul got really jealous and upset. In fact, we know it happens to him again. When David comes back from killing Goliath, Saul is inexplicably sad. Not inexplicably. He's like, damn it, David didn't die. God has really anointed this one. And I really have fallen out of favor. And guess what? He falls into a depression yet again. An evil spirit from the Lord takes over him. And he is once again down in the dumps. And basically, after that, Saul kept David there, but he's unhappy. He's unhappy with the fact that David is supposed to replace him. Not to mention the fact that Saul has a son named Jonathan. And do you know what happens when David comes to live at the court with Saul? He's the same age as Jonathan. So they're growing up together. And guess what? They're best buds. They love each other so much. They are so bonded. It's mentioned a couple of times in the Bible. In fact, there's a crazy line in here that basically says that David loved Jonathan. The love he had for Jonathan surpassed all women. And now, I'm not saying David and Jonathan had gay relations. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, I don't doubt that that's true. I don't doubt that that's true because Jonathan grew up in a court understanding, having a complete understanding that he was supposed to be king. And from the day he was born, he would be groomed to that. Subject to duty and honor and all the pomp and circumstance of the court. And you can't do what you want. You can't just be a free spirit, go ride your horse, go swim in the river. You can't do that. You're a prince. You got to stay, you got to learn, you got to do all this stuff. And now David's been thrown into this, and now he's got to learn all this stuff. And Jonathan knows exactly what it's like. He knows exactly what it's like. And David would probably be having a harder time with this because he's a shepherd. He had been used to roaming, being out, living on the land, and now he's not doing that. Now he's living among the men. So I can see the two of them bonding like crazy. Plus, Saul tries to kill David a couple of times and Jonathan rescues him, saves him. So they're trauma bonded, right? They're friendship bonded, they're trauma bonded, and everything I've read about David and the little that's in here about Jonathan, it just makes them sound like they're good kids. They're good guys. And why can't two men have such a deep affection for each other and it not be sexual? And yet their friendship is valued more than women. Bros before hoes. But I don't think they think poorly of women. They just understand each other. They have such a deep understanding of each other because they are in similar situations. All right, my lovelies, that is the goal today, to understand each other just a little bit better and to use the stories from our past to help us now, right? So, are you in a David and Goliath situation? I am. I'm not even going to discuss it, but I am. And I'm going to be like David. I'm going to use my brain. I'm going to smart instead of hard. All right? I'm going to fight smarter instead of harder. I'm going to use my past experiences to help me with the strife that I am currently facing. And David is a great story. The David and Goliath story is a great example of that. All right, my blooming blossoms, truly that is it for today. I hope that you have gleaned a few things. I hope this was an entertaining rendition. I hope you think about the Bible in terms of physical things that are going on with the people there too. I also want you to imagine conversations, right? Like, it doesn't just happen. It doesn't just like, Samuel can't just say to Saul, you're out of God's favor, and like leave the room. There's more to it than that, right? So we got to flush it out. We have to think about it a little bit and we got to flush it out. Join me next time, my darlings, when we talk a little bit about pop culture and how it was my nanny. Go on, live your life in full on Fl'awesome Blossom.